Top Med Talk.
Welcome to Top Med Talk. I'm Kate Leslie and I'm here at the Euroanaesthesia 2025 meeting, the annual meeting of the European Society of Anaesthesiology and Intensive Care in Lisbon, in Portugal. This is day 2. We've had a fantastic first day. The highlight, I think, being the opening ceremony where we heard from the leadership of ISAIC about the new Helsinki Declaration and about the Declaration for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion. And to talk more about the world affairs in anaesthesia, I've got a fantastic guest here today, Wayne Morris. Wayne, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
So I'm an anaesthesiologist, a specialist anaesthetist in Christchurch, New Zealand. My main claim to fame, I guess, is that until last year, so until 2024, I was the president of the World Federation of Societies of Anaesthesiologists. So that was a 2-year term. I've been on the board for a total of 12 years before that and held roles like the chair of the Education Committee and also director of programs.
And before you were officially part of the WFSA, you'd done decades of work in overseas aid, I think mainly in the Pacific?
Correct, yes. I trained in Christchurch and also Melbourne. After working briefly there as a consultant anaesthetist, my family and I moved to Fiji, so that was in 2000. And the job that I had there was a senior lecturer in anaesthesia and physiology, and I also worked as a clinical anaesthetist at the Colonial War Memorial Hospital, which is the main hospital in Suva. And so that was a 2-year appointment. Soon after we arrived, there was a coup, and we lived through a military mutiny and curfews and a whole lot of instability. But it really, I think, helped me to understand some of the issues of living and working in an environment that had limited resources, and I guess fueled my interest for global anaesthesia.
There's an incredible community of people like you in New Zealand and Australia, isn't there?
Yeah, some of my best mentors have come from Australia and New Zealand, Hayden Pernt and also Steve Kinnear. But you do find this community throughout the world, and it's an interesting community that doesn't necessarily have a lot of visibility. You see them occasionally speaking at meetings, but it's perhaps not seen as mainstream in some areas.
When I go to meetings now, one of my favourite sessions is always the overseas aid session. Now, there's always one, I think, but as you say, unless you seek it out, you mightn't find it. But you hear from these incredible people, really smart, really, really dedicated, and, working in some pretty difficult situations. Actually, on Top Med Talk last year, we had Amanda Barrick.
Oh, yes.
And she came to talk to us about the work that she and David Pescott have done in Mongolia. Have you been there?
I did briefly go with Amanda and David. It's a fascinating place, and I take my hat off to them. They've done amazing work there and also in Myanmar. And I think one of the key things with both Amanda and David is they've made a long-term commitment to those places, and especially Mongolia. They've worked there for many years, and it's one of the examples that is held up there of real change over a 10, 20-year period. So they've grown the specialty of anaesthesiology in Mongolia, and they really have made a huge difference.
So what drew you to join WFSA and to, chair all those important committees and then be the president?
So I joined the Education Committee in 2008, and I guess what happened before that is I'd stayed involved in education in the Pacific. There was a course called the Primary Trauma Care course, which is a short trauma management course, multidisciplinary course that was designed for places that didn't have as many resources as some of the countries that were running the Advanced Trauma Life Support course, for example. And that led to a number of educational teaching visits. I worked with a colleague, Roger Gook from Perth, Australia, and we wrote and developed the Essential Pain Management program. So I did have this long-standing interest in education in low resource settings. So I got onto the Education Committee in 2008, and I became the chair in 2012. As you well know, you sometimes get onto these conveyor belts and they just keep on going and you keep on climbing the ladder.
And all of a sudden, you're the president.
Yes. And I remember you were president of the Australian and New Zealand College of Anaesthetists when we set up the Overseas Aid Committee. So I was the first chair of that. I only did that job for a couple of years because I got busy with the World Federation stuff. But it all helps to establish the networks and to develop programs in different parts of the world.
I particularly like the effective pain medicine course.
Essential pain
Essential
management,
pain
EPM.
management.
Yes.
I think effective pain medicine is a good acronym as well.
Yep, that's equally good.
Anyway, I've raised it because you have another acronym, which I think was RAT.
Correct.
Yeah, can you tell us about that?
So the course is incredibly simple. I almost feel embarrassed by how simple it is sometimes. So I describe it as a system for managing patients with pain, but also, probably more importantly, it's a system for people to teach others about pain management. We tend to sometimes get very focused on the high level pain management in anaesthesiology meetings, but I think one thing that we miss is the multidisciplinary approach. We need other people to help us manage pain. And so this course is designed to be multidisciplinary. We have a very simple educational framework. Our system is recognise, assess, treat, or RAT. And it's a very simple idea, but it just seems to resonate with people, whether they're working in Mongolia or Bolivia or Burundi or wherever.
So, what was pain management like in these places before you started the program?
Well, I can generalize and say that in many low resource countries, there's very poor access to pain management for moderate to severe pain. There was a WHO study, which is now more than 10 years old, but it estimated about 3/4 of the world's population does not have access to treatments for moderate to severe pain. So what that
That's
means is
terrible, isn't it?
people like, well, probably the classic example would be patients with cancer. So they would be living and dying with pain. And for a lot of the low resource countries, that's lack of access to morphine. Now, of course, we've got to be careful. We've got to have a rational approach to morphine use. But the reality is that in many countries, there is very, very limited access to morphine for the types of pain patients that really benefit from morphine, so acute pain and cancer pain.
So, when you were the president of the WFSA, did you have any particular projects that were your, particular vision for the organisation?
When I joined the board of WFSA in 2012, I think it was an organisation that was still a bit old-fashioned, to be honest. And one of the most important decisions that we made was to employ a CEO in 2013. Some people would have met him. His name was Julian Gore-Booth. And he really helped us to drag WFSA into the 21st century. We really thought carefully about our vision and mission. And so the vision of WFSA is universal access to safe anaesthesia, and the mission is uniting and empowering anaesthesiologists around the world to improve patient care. So very simple vision and mission, but I think it fits with the idea that we're all part of this global community. We should be working together, learning from each other to provide the best possible care for our patients. And we acknowledge that some countries with limited resources perhaps don't provide the type of care that's available in high income countries, but the important thing is we should always be trying to provide the best care with the resources that are available. So you asked me at the beginning what project that I'm most proud of. I don't know whether that was the word that you used, but I guess it was being part of that team that really restructured WFSA. It's now become a organisation that is much more effective from an advocacy point of view. It's providing really good educational materials for colleagues all around the world, and we're actually seeing much more effective collaboration between member societies.
I remember one of the first meetings I went to was in Paris, and there were about 800 anaesthetists from Australia and New Zealand at that meeting. I can remember. I went to the WFSA session, and we had an anaesthesiologist from the United States who was talking about how much sufentanil to put in a walking epidural for a woman in labour. And then there was an anaesthesiologist from Argentina, talking about more like the issues that you were talking about. And then there was an anaesthesiologist from Sierra Leone who pointed out that 1 in 4 women in Sierra Leone die of reproduction-related problems prematurely. And everyone in the audience kind of went, oh my God, what an incredible statistic. And, aren't we lucky to have the WFSA there to do something about it? It was fantastic.
I find the World Congress an exciting meeting to go to because you do get this range of experiences. But one of the things that we've been very careful to do in the last few years is to think about the relevance of WFSA not only to low and middle income countries, but also to high income countries. And it is an organization that represents us all. So there are actually shared issues that affect anesthesiologists everywhere. And while the scale of the problems might be different in Sierra Leone to Australia or to Argentina, it's just really interesting to see that some of the themes are still the same. It's workforce, it's not enough people, it's well-being of that workforce, how you protect that workforce, and some of the same clinical issues that we all deal with.
And it's becoming a bit of a theme at this meeting that all of those things that you're talking about just feel a bit under threat at the moment. It's why it's so important for medical practitioners and anesthesiologists to get together at meetings like this and find common ground. And, we've survived the pandemic, maybe, but we were all changed by it. And there's a lot of people talking about that here and how to recover from burnout and the stress of that situation. So I think it's a really good point that you make. And of course, along with our Euroanaesthesia meeting, the World Congress of Anaesthesiology meeting is very popular with everyone around the world. So we were talking just before, speaking of diversity, about Dr. Jannicke Mellin-Olsen, an incredible woman in medicine and a former president of the World Federation of Society of Anaesthesiologists. And ISAIAC has named their Declaration on Diversity, Equity and Inclusion after Jannicke. She was a great friend and colleague of yours. Wayne, what are your great memories of Jannicke?
So Jannicke was chair of the Education Committee when I joined in 2008, and she really has been a tremendous friend and mentor to me throughout my career. I, she and I were on the board together, and I guess we saw eye to eye on many issues. But as I said, she was also a dear friend, and I got to know Jannicke and her husband Jorma very well, and we spent a lot of time together. So it was very tragic that, well, it's always tragic when somebody like Jannicke dies, but we also knew that she'd been living with cancer for some time, and while she had treatments that extended her life, we knew it was probably going to be limited by time. So it was very sad when Jannicke passed away. I'm delighted that ISAIAC has come up with this declaration in her honour. We also honoured Jannicke last year at the Singapore World Congress when she received a Distinguished Service Award, which is WFSA's top award. And I was so pleased that I was able to present that to her at the World Congress last year. So she'll be missed, but she's the sort of person whose energy still remains, and people have very fond memories of her, and she's a friend to so many people around the world.
So you've handed over the presidency of the WFSA to another incredible woman. Can you tell us about her and what the WFSA is doing moving forward?
So Daniela Filipescu is the current WFSA president, and she took over in Singapore last year. She will be president until the Marrakesh World Congress, which is in April 2026. And the president-elect at the moment is another close friend, Carolina Haylock Law from Honduras. So I've worked closely with both Daniela and also Carolina over the years on many projects. As you say, Daniela is an amazing person as well. I'm just amazed at this meeting at the number of diverse topics that she is speaking about to do with blood management, also cardiovascular anesthesia. So she's a very impressive scientist as well as being an amazing leader.
Well, it's been a while since I first asked you to be on the podcast, Wayne, and it is so great to finally get you into the pod and hear about your wonderful journey. Although you've stepped down from the WFSA, I'm sure that your contributions to anesthesia, in particular overseas aid, are really only just beginning.
That's certainly continuing. Yes.
Definitely. Well, thank you. I think we'll stop there. We've had a great time talking to Wayne. We're also on social media. We're on Facebook, X, we're now on Blue Sky, and also YouTube. We'd like to thank the ISAIAC for their hospitality and our sponsors, BD and GE, without whom we could not bring Top Med Talk free and open access to the world. Looking forward to next time.
Top Med Talk.
Thanks for downloading Top Med Talk. Don't forget to subscribe, check us out on YouTube, and of course on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook and X. Also, it's important to remember that Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EPPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that, and the way to do that is eppom.org. Check out our website and find out about some of the incredible conferences we're going to be arranging across the year. eppom.org.